Hello, my name is Megan King, and I am a senior theater major at Bob Jones University. This semester, I had the privilege of directing tonight's production in fulfillment of a Bachelor of Arts in Theater. Like other theaters across the country, we at BJU have experienced many obstacles and challenges during the recent pandemic. However, thanks to the tireless effort of our administration, faculty, and staff, we have been able to hold in-person classes on campus, as well as conduct live events, such as concerts, recitals, and of course, theater productions. Tonight, we are very excited to expand our audience beyond the limits of our campus here in Greenville, South Carolina. Although you will not be joining us in person tonight, I pray you will still be entertained, challenged, and inspired by tonight's show. This evening represents not only my experiences over the past 4 years working towards this capstone project, but also the many hours of work put in by several individuals over the past 8 weeks. Our cast has been rehearsing since early September, and our designers have been working for nearly as long. From the emphasis of an actor's line to the timing of the tech cues, every detail has been carefully crafted and considered to help tell this unusual story. To see the list of people who worked on this production, check out the link in the description for our online program. Tonight's play is one of many written by Eugene O'Neill, who is often considered the father of American drama. O'Neill introduced America to serious dramatic plays that often included elements of anti-realism, such as in his famous plays The Emperor Jones and Beyond the Horizon. As you watch tonight's performance, look for elements of anti-realism that give insight into what's really happening in the minds of the characters. Written in 1914, tonight's one-act play takes place in a small lifeboat drifting helplessly off the Grand Banks of Newfoundland. 4 individuals sit in this boat, hoping to be rescued and waiting for the light of dawn. Join us as we travel back to the 1910s and listen in on a very interesting conversation about life, destiny, and ultimate purpose. We hope you enjoy tonight's production of Fog by Eugene O'Neill.
production of Fog by Eugene O'Neill, directed by Megan King. We're so glad you all could come here tonight. As I just said, Megan King is directing the show. That is in partial fulfillment of her degree in Bachelor of Arts in Theater. We're so glad you're here tonight. This is a very special show. It is a small show and yet a huge show. And we're so glad you all could join us here tonight. If I could have you all take your cell phones out for me and silence them for the duration of the show. There is no intermission, but if you do need to use the restrooms are out that door right there, all the way down past the gate, first door on your right. That will be where the restrooms are. And I hope you all enjoy the show. I'm going to say a word of prayer, and we will begin. Heavenly Father, I come to you in Jesus' name. Lord, thank you for this day you've given us today. Thank you for an opportunity that you've given us to come together and experience art together and to perform art, Lord. And I pray that you would just bless this show tonight. Bless the performers, bless the technicians and all the work that they have done, and pray that you would just use this art for your honor and glory tonight, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
I'm beginning to feel pretty chilly. How about you? Hello there. You haven't gone to sleep on me, have you?
No, I'm not asleep.
Thought you might have. I did a while ago. My eyes refused to stay open any longer. Couldn't imagine where I was when I woke up. I'd forgotten about the wreck.
You are fortunate to be able to sleep. I wish I could go to sleep and forget all this.
Oh, come now. You mustn't keep thinking of it. That won't do you any good. Brace up. We're sure to get out of this in no time. I figured it all out. You know how long a time it was between the time we hit the derelict? It was a derelict we hit, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Well, the wireless was going all the time, if you remember. And I was talking with one of the officers, and he said we have many calls from ships saying they're on their way to help us. One of them is sure to pick us up.
In this fog?
Oh, this will go away as soon as the sun comes up. I've seen it many a time in my country place on Connecticut shore. Maybe not as thick as this one, but nearly as bad. But it always seemed to go away as soon as the sun came up.
You forget we are now near the Grand Banks, the home of fog.
I must say, you aren't a very cheerful companion. Why don't you look at the bright side? Grand Banks. I refuse to be scared.
I have no intention of making our situation seem worse than it really is. I have every hope we will eventually be rescued, but it's better not to expect too much. It only makes disappointment or bitter when it comes.
I suppose you're right, but I can't help being optimistic.
Do you remember how downcast you were yesterday when we failed to hear any sound of a ship? Today is liable to be the same unless this fog lifts. So don't hope for too much.
You're forgetting the fact that there was no sun yesterday. That kind of weather can't last forever.
Perhaps we couldn't see the sun on account of the fog.
I will admit I did feel pretty dismal yesterday, after the terrible thing happened.
You mean after the child died?
Yes, I thought the woman would never stop crying. Oh, it was awful. Her cries and the fog and nothing else anywhere.
It was the most terrible thing I'd ever seen or even heard of. I never dreamed anything could be so full of tragedy.
It was enough to give anyone the blues, that's for sure. Besides, my clothes were wet and I was freezing cold. Imagine how merry I felt. Not that they're any drier now, but somehow I feel warmer.
So, you think the child's death was a terrible thing?
Yes, of course. Why, don't you?
No.
What you said just a minute
I was
ago.
speaking of the grief and despair of the mother, but death was kind to the child. It saved him many a long year of sordid drudgery.
I don't know as I agree with you there. Everyone has a chance in this world. They've got to work hard for it, of course.
What chance had that poor child? Naturally sickly and weak from underfeeding, transplanted to the stinking room of a tenement or the filthy hovel of a mining village? What glowing opportunities did life hold out that death should not be regarded as a blessing for him? I mean, if he had the ordinary amount of ability and intelligence, considering him as the average child of ignorant Polish immigrants, Surely his prospects of ever becoming anything but a beast of burden weren't bright, were they?
Well, no. But
If you could bring him back to life, would you do so? Could you conscientiously drag him away from that fine sleep of his to face what he would have to face? Taking the joy you would give to his mother out of the question, would you do it for him, individually?
Perhaps not, looking at it from that standpoint.
There is no other standpoint. The child was diseased at birth, stricken with a hereditary ill only the most vital men are able to shake off.
You mean...
I mean poverty, the most deadly and prevalent of all diseases.
Oh, that's it, eh? Well, it seems a pretty necessary sickness, and you'll hardly find a cure for it. I see you're a bit of a reformer.
No, but there are times when the frightful injustice of it all sickens me with life in general.
I find life pretty good. I don't know as I'd change it even if I could.
Spoken like a successful man. For you are a successful man, are you not? I mean in a worldly way.
Yes, you might call me so, I guess. I've made my little pile, but it's not been an easy time getting it, let me tell you.
You had some advantages, did you not? Education, a clean home, plenty to eat, and so forth?
I went to high school and had the other things you mentioned. My people were not exactly what you could call poor, but they were not certainly rich. Why do you ask?
Do you think you would be as successful and satisfied with life if you had started with the obstacles which that poor dead child would have had to contend with if he had lived?
I don't know. What's the use of talking about what might have happened? I'm not responsible for the way the world is run.
But supposing you are responsible.
What?
I mean, supposing we, the self-satisfied, successful members of society, are responsible for the injustice visited upon the heads of our less fortunate brothers in Christ because of our shameful indifference to it. We see misery all around us, and we do not care. We do nothing. Are we not then, in part at least, responsible for it? Have you ever thought of that?
No. I'm not going to start thinking about it now.
I see. It's a case of what is Hecuba to you that you should weep for her.
Hecuba? Oh, you mean the woman. Oh, you can't accuse me of any heartlessness there. I've never felt so sorry for anyone in my life. Why, I was actually crying myself at one time. I felt so sorry for her. By the way, she hasn't made a sound since it got dark last evening. Is she asleep? Can you see her? You're nearer to her than I am.
She is very still. She must be asleep. I hope so, poor woman.
Yes, a little sleep will do her a world of good.
She still holds the body of the child close to her breast. I suppose you...
Excuse me for interrupting you, but have you noticed how light it's getting? It didn't strike me until you turned around just now. I can see your face plainly, and a few minutes ago I didn't know whether you were blonde or brunette.
If this fog would only lift.
It's gonna lift. You wait and see. You'll find my optimism is justified. Now, what was it you started to say?
I was saying I supposed you'd never seen this woman on board.
No. I was in the smoking room playing bridge most of the time. I'm not much of a sailor, don't care much about the water. I just went over to Europe because the wife and girls insisted. Was bored to death and made an excuse to get away. No, sir, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I'm a businessman, pure and simple. And the farther I get away from that business, the more dissatisfied I am. I've built that business up from nothing, and it's sort of like a child of mine. It gives me pleasure to watch over it. And when I'm away, I'm uneasy. I don't like to leave it in strange hands. As for traveling, little old New York and the USA is good enough for me. But you asked me if I'd ever seen the woman. I don't think so, because I never went down into the steerage. I know some of the first-class passengers did, but I was never curious. It's a filthy sort of hole, isn't it?
It's not so bad. I spent quite a good deal of my time down there.
In your role as a reformer?
No, I simply found the company in the steerage more interesting to talk to than the second-class passengers. I'm not a reformer, at least not in the professional sense.
What particular line are you in?
I'm a writer.
Thought you were something of the kind. I knew you weren't in business when I heard those socialistic ideas of yours. Beautiful idea, socialism, too impractical, never come about. Just a dream.
I'm not a socialist, especially. Just a humanist, that is all.
What kind of writing do you do?
I write poetry.
See, there's not a lot of money in that, is there?
No.
I don't know about never thought hardtack could taste so good. Are you gonna have any?
No, I'm not hungry. The thought of that poor woman takes all my hunger away. I used to watch her every day down in the steerage, playing with her little son, who is now dead. He must have been the only child she had ever had. The look on her face was so wonderfully tender as she bent over him. What will her life be, now that death has robbed her of the only recompense for her slavery? It seems such needless cruelty. Why was I not taken instead? I who have no friends or family to weep, and am not afraid to die.
You take things to heart too much. It's just like a poet. She'll forget all about it probably sooner than you will. One forgets everything in time. What a devil of a world it would be if we didn't. Funny thing when you come to think of it. I mean, how we came together in this boat. It's a mystery to me on how she ever got in here. How there's no oars in this boat, but there's still plenty of food. Remember, there was no lack of lifeboats, and when the children were taken off, I was ordered into one myself. The old thing must have gotten smashed somehow, for it leaked like a sieve. And in spite of our bailing, we were soon dumped into the water. I heard the sound of voices near us, and I tried to swim towards them, but I must have gotten twisted in the fog. For when I did find a boat, and let me tell you, I was pretty nearly all in about then, it was this one, and you and she were in it. Now what I want to know
It is easily explained. Have you ever been so sick of disappointment and weary of life in general that death seemed to you the only way out?
Hardly. But what does that have to
Listen, and you will see. For that is the way I felt. My soul was weary and longing for sleep. When the ship struck the derelict, it seemed to me providential. Here was the moment I had been waiting for. I would go down with the ship, and that small part of the world which knew me would think my death an accident.
You mean to say you were going to commit?
I was going to die, yes. So I hid in the steerage, fearing that some of the ship's officers would insist on saving my life in spite of me. Finally, when everyone had gone, I came out and walked around the main deck. I heard the sound of voices come from a dark corner and discovered that this woman and her child had been left behind. How that happened, I do not know. Probably she hid for fear that the child would be crushed by the terror-stricken immigrants. At any rate, there she was. And I decided she was so happy in her love for her child that it would be wrong to let her die. So I looked around and discovered that this lifeboat had been lowered down to the main deck and left hanging there. The oars had been taken out, probably for extra rowers in some other boat. I persuaded the woman to climb aboard, and going up to the main deck, I lowered the lifeboat the rest of the way to the water. This was not much of a task, for the steamer was settling lower in the water every minute. I then slid down one of the ropes, and cutting both of the lines which held her, we pushed off. There was a faint breeze, which pushed us slowly away from the sinking ship, until she was hidden in the fog. The suspense of waiting for her to go down was terrible. Even as it was, we were nearly swamped by the waves when the steamer took her final plunge.
I hope you've abandoned that suicide idea.
I have. Absolutely. I think all that's happened to me is an omen sent by the gods to convince me my past unhappiness is past, and my fortune will change for the better.
That's the way to talk. Superstition is a good thing sometimes.
But if I had known the sufferings that poor woman was to undergo as a result of my reckless life-saving, I would have let her go down with the ship and gone myself.
Don't think of it any longer. You couldn't have helped that. I wonder what it was the child died of. I thought it was asleep when I heard a choke and cough. Next minute, the woman commenced to scream. I won't forget those screams for the rest of my life.
He was naturally frail and delicate, and the shock of what had happened combined with exposure to bring on a sort of convulsion. He was dead when I went to see what was the matter.
It's getting considerably lighter. It must be about time for the sun to come up. If we're gonna have any sun.
It was just about this time yesterday morning when the poor little fellow died.
Let's not talk about it any longer. She might wake up and start screaming. I can't stand that.
She doesn't understand English.
No, she'd know just the same. Mothers have an instinct when it comes to that. I've seen that proven in my family more than once.
Have you ever lost any of your children?
No, thank God.
You may well thank God, even if people do, as you claimed a while ago, forget so easily.
You're not married, are you?
No.
I didn't think you were. You people with artistic temperaments run to more affinities than to wives. I suppose you've lots of those.
Did you hear that?
Hear what?
Just a moment ago while you were talking, I thought I heard a sound like a steamer's whistle.
Yes, it is a steamer.
And it's getting louder. They must be coming this way.
Only this rotten fog would lift for a minute.
Let's hope it will. We run as much risk of being run down as we do of being saved while this continues. They couldn't see us 20 feet away in this.
Couldn't we yell or make some kind of noise?
They couldn't hear us now. We'll try when they get closer. Is it just my imagination, or is it getting colder?
No, I've noticed too. I've been freezing to death for the last 5 minutes. Wish we had oars so we could keep rowing.
Shh, did you hear that?
What, the whistle?
No,
Where
this
did
is
it go?
a sound like running water. There, do you hear it now?
Yes, I do hear it. But what could it be? There isn't any water out here except for what's underneath us. It's so cold.
That poor woman will be frozen when she wakes up.
It sounds louder in a minute, but I can't see anything. Oh, this fog!
Perhaps it may be land, but I hardly think we could have drifted that far.
What's that?
An iceberg! Steady there! You'll be in the water in a minute if you're not careful. But there's nothing to be frightened over. Lucky for us, it's calm, or we would be smashed to pieces.
As it is, we'll only freeze to death. Is that what you mean?
It is cold. I wonder how big the berg is. Come, help me try to push the boat away from it.
Ouch! My hands are freezing.
No use wasting any effort on that. The boat is too heavy and you can get no grip on the ice. Oh no! I never thought of that!
Thought of what?
The steamer, man! The steamer! Think of the danger she is in. If they were ever to hit this massive ice, she would sink before they could lower a boat.
Can't we do something? We'll yell to them when they get
My
here.
word, man, don't do that! This is probably a rescue ship out looking for survivors from our boat. If they hear any cries at all, they'll think they're cries for help and come right in this direction. Not a sound if you have any regard for the lives of those on board.
But if you don't do something, you're liable to pass us and we'll never know it.
We can die, but we cannot risk the lives of others to save our own. She must be right on top of us.
She's going away. I'm not staying here and dying on account of your fool ideas. Hey! Hey! Oh!
You coward! I should have known what to expect.
I'll get even with you, you loafer, if we ever get on shore. She must have hit it after all.
No, that can't be it. I don't hear any shouts. I know what it is. The berg is melting and breaking up. That was a piece that fell in the water.
It almost landed on us. I'm not going to stand this any longer. We'll be crushed like flies. I'll take a chance and swim for it. You can stay here and die if you want to. Ah! Let me go! Let me go! Ah, this is all right for you. You want to die? You want to kill me too, you murderer?
You fool! You couldn't swim for 5 minutes in this icy water. Come, be sensible. Act like a man.
She seems to be getting quite near us again.
Yes, a moment ago I thought I heard a sound like oars, creaking in the oarlocks and striking water.
Maybe they've lowered a boat.
There's the steamer now, and she can hardly be more than a quarter of a mile away. What luck!
There's the boat you saw. Look, it's rowing straight towards us.
I wonder how they knew we were here.
Hello there!
Hello?
Are you people off the Starling?
Yes! You see, my optimism was justified after all. I wish you'd forget about our little unpleasantness earlier. I must confess I was a bit rattled and didn't know exactly what I was doing.
I had forgotten all about it.
Thank
to land on. What made you cling so close to the bird? Cold, wasn't it?
We drifted into it in the fog, and having no oars, could not row away. It was about the time we first heard your whistle.
Is the woman sick?
She is asleep. Poor woman.
Where's the kid?
In her arms. But how did you know?
We never found you but for that. Why didn't you give us a shout or make some kind of racket?
We were afraid you'd come in this direction and hit the iceberg.
But we might have passed you and never had an inkling.
In a case of that kind, one has to take chances.
That's very fine of you, I must say. Most people would have only thought of themselves. As it were, if it hadn't been for the kid crying, we would have missed you. I was on the bridge with the first officer. We had been warned about this bird, and when the fog came up, we started slowing down until we were barely creeping and stopped altogether every now and then. It was during one of these stops when everything was still. I heard the crying, and I said to the first officer, "It sounds like a kid crying, doesn't it?" And he thought it did too. It kept getting plainer and plainer until there was no chance for mistake. Weird too, it sounded, with everything so quiet and the fog so heavy. And I said to him again, "It's a kid crying, sure enough, but how in the devil did it get out here?" And then we both remembered we had been ordered to keep a lookout for any of the survivors of the Starling that hadn't been picked up yet. And then he said, "It's probably one of those poor devils from the Starling," and ordered me to have a boat load. I grabbed my compass and jumped in. We could hear the kid crying the whole time, couldn't we, boys?
Yes, ma'am.
That's how I was able to shape such a direct course for you. I was steering by the sound that stopped just as the fog rose. That's right, you better wake her up. The steamer will be ready to pick us up in a minute, and she must be stiff with the cold. Make a line fast to this boat, and we'll tow her back to the ship.
Poor happy woman.
Well,
The woman is dead.
Dead?
too bad, but the child is all right, of course.
The child has been dead for 24 hours. He died at dawn yesterday.
He's a bit out of his head, isn't he? Exposure affects a lot of them this way.
He told you the exact truth of the matter.
Of course. All fast?
Aye, aye.
You coming in here or going to stay where you are?
I think I will stay with the dead.
Cheerful beggar. Give way all.